This is Office Talk with Annette Stepanian. There's an old story about the iconic artist Pablo Picasso that goes something like this. You see, Picasso was sitting in a Parisian cafe when an admirer approached him and asked if he would do a quick sketch on a paper napkin. Picasso politely agreed, swiftly executed the work, and handed back the napkin, but not before asking for a rather significant amount of money for his work. The admirer was shocked. She exclaimed, "How can you ask for so much? It took you a minute to do this." "No," Picasso replied, "it took me 40 years. I love this story, and frankly, it just gave me chills when I shared it here with you today, because I meet so many entrepreneurs, and myself included, who have trouble valuing their time and their work and asking to be compensated for it. So how about you? Do you experience this in your business? Do you wonder if you're asking for too much or too little or not enough when it comes to pricing? Do you have a financial plan for your business, or are you getting caught up in the day-to-day of serving your clients or customers to find out that after all of that effort, you're basically making peanuts? Well, if you answered yes, or if these thoughts have ever crossed your mind, you're going to love this episode. Kristin Kaplan is coming on to explain why pricing and planning are two of the most important factors in running a profitable business. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty of pricing and productivity. We want you to design a business that works for your life. And remember, it's life first and then business. So I hope you enjoy this episode. I know you're going to get a lot out of it because I did. So with that said, let's go to the show. Hey, Kristin, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
I love you. So let's just get that out of the way. I'm so excited to have you here because I think you're such a wealth of knowledge on a lot of different topics. But before we dive into all of that good stuff, maybe let's just bring our listeners up to speed on who you are and what you do and why I love you so much.
All right. I was going to say, do you love me because I talk about money and pricing? That's why a lot of people like to listen to me. But, well, my name is Kristin Kaplan, and I started my career in the wedding world. I moved to Nashville from Los Angeles 10 years ago. And at the time, I did not have a job. So I figured, let's start a business because that's the logical.
You're from LA?
Well, I'm from Boston originally, but I lived in LA. I went to school there. I went to Loyola Marymount.
Wait. Why did I not know this? Okay, that's probably why I love you, because there's a little SoCal in you.
There's a little California there.
Okay. Sorry. Please,
it's
continue.
Funny. But yeah, I went to school out there and stayed out there, worked in the entertainment industry for a few years, like everybody in Los Angeles, I feel like. And when my then boyfriend, now husband, got a job in Nashville, we decided to move out here, and I had nothing else going on. So I was like, I'll start a wedding planning company. I think I'd be really good at that. And I'd kind of dabbled in it a little bit when I was in LA helping out a friend. So next thing I know, I started a company, and 10 years later, I was still planning weddings. I still have one wedding this year, so I still do a little bit of weddings. But then probably about 3 or 4 years ago, I would have a lot of people in the wedding industry, especially in my area, kind of coming to me and saying like, hey, you look like you know what's up, and you've been doing this a while, and you seem to be making decent money. Like, can you help me? And that's kind of how my unofficial mentoring started. It was just kind of helping people out. And I'd be like, sure, let's figure something out. And I'd help them start to figure out their business strategy and specifically their pricing. For some reason, that was something I noticed was a real struggle for a lot of people in the wedding industry. And then in 2015, I basically just started talking a lot about pricing on Periscope, back when Periscope was cool.
Yeah, for like 5 minutes.
I know, yeah. I was kind of bummed when it went away because I did really well on Periscope. I was like, man, why does the one platform I like have to be, you know?
Yeah. Well, now you can like stream on anything, on anywhere, and stream way too much. So
I'm starting to go back into the live streaming world. But yes, I started ranting about pricing all the time on Periscope, and that got a lot more people wanting to hear me talk about it. And from there, I decided to officially kind of launch KristinKaplan.com and launch actual consulting services for real. And from there, it's just kind of grown into, I do a lot of speaking on pricing now. I just talk a lot about it. I love helping people figure out how to make money in their business and how to be profitable at it. But at the same time, I also geek out about productivity and business strategy because I also want it to be not overwhelming for people and easy for them and for them to be efficient. So I kind of geek out on all those topics.
Yeah, because newsflash, your business is supposed to make money.
Yes, exactly.
Sometimes I think
I tell people all the time, I'm like, if you're not making any money, you just have an expensive hobby. It's not a business.
Yes. And I think because so many people go into it for passion and for all that stuff, and then they forget that there's this money component of it. And sometimes they feel bad charging because, it's something that maybe comes easily to them and they don't feel like that is a skill that is valuable, that deserves to be exchanged for money. So I'm excited to have you here because I know it's something that I've struggled with and continue to struggle with. And so I'm kind of for selfish reasons want you here. But no, I mean, really, it's one thing that I've heard a lot from folks is I do see that, I see them undercharging themselves so much. And so I'm hoping this is going to shine a light on that and give them some tips to fix it. So
I hope so too.
So tell us everything you know about pricing. Go.
In 1 hour.
Go. You can do it. No. So let's take a step back. Where does somebody start to figure out how to price? I've gotten questions from folks like, I don't know what others in my industry charge. Like, is this the right price? Is this, I want to kind of stay, like, I want to see what others are doing so that I know I'm kind of in line, which I don't always agree with, and we could talk about that. But let's talk about where do you even start figuring out like what a baseline price should be?
I think there's two answers to this. And this is where I do think it's important to look at your market. It's important to do market research, not just about pricing. I mean, market research is huge. And I feel like a lot of people skip that step in starting a business. So there's a lot you should learn about your market. And price should be one of them. You should have an idea of what the general rates are for what you're trying to do. But it's not a be all and end all because many, many people in your industry might also not be making money. So you don't want to base your pricing strategy off of what they're doing entirely. So I think it's important to know that piece of information. But you really need to start with a couple things. Basically, pricing is twofold. We have the cost-based side of it, which is the math and numbers part of it. And then we have the value-based side of it. And that is, the harder to grasp area because that comes down to, understanding worth and value and uniqueness and a lot of other pieces. So you have these two different schools of thought and you kind of have to meld them together and that's what creates your pricing. But a great place to really start is on that cost-based side and what you want to make at the end of the day. You need to look at, okay, what do I need to bring in? And you look at a lot of factors of, are you full-time? Are you part-time? Where are you located? What's the average cost of living there? There's a lot of things that go into thinking about like what you want your salary to be and what you want to pay yourself. But that's a really important place to start with pricing because at the end of the day, if you're not going to be able to pay yourself any money, you're going to have a really tough road.
Okay, so you say pay yourself money, but can you unpack that a little bit? Because it's not just paying yourself the money. And I think I see a lot of people who are like, what income comes into their business, they take as income for themselves. But that's like not true.
It's a lot, yeah.
Yeah.
You got your gross revenue, which is every dollar that comes into your business and everything that hits your bank account. But at the end of the day, you need to be accounting for several things. Obviously, all of your costs, your fixed costs, which is everything that it takes to run your business. You have to take into your consideration your costs per client or cost per product, or depending on what specifically you're selling, your materials, your labor, all of that needs to come into play as well. You got to be covering those costs. Then you also have your salary. That's one big component of it. And then, of course, you also have to pay taxes. So you have to make sure you're allotting for that because the last thing you want is to, pay yourself money and then suddenly tax time comes around and they're like, oh, you owe 10 grand. And you're like, I don't have 10 grand because I spent that money.
Taxes are gross. I mean, seriously, we're doing our taxes now. And I'm like, ew, like so much anyway, but whatever. You can't argue it. Just don't fight it. Go with it. But you got to prepare for it because you might have a really good month, but then
You didn't factor in how much of that you were going to have to give back to the government.
Yeah. So factor that in. Okay. I wish I had like a bell or something like ding, ding, ding. Okay. Okay, we got to factor in the taxes, our expenses, fixed and variable costs. What else? Anything else that we should be thinking about as we're trying to just come up with that baseline of like, okay, what are my services going to be? Like, what am I charging?
I think the last little piece is you do want a little bit left over for profit too, after you've paid yourself. Like there should be some money left in your business bank account so that you can reinvest that and grow your business further. Because if you're not, most of us do want to grow our businesses as well. So I think it's important to think about that little piece too, that in addition to all of your expenses, your own salary, your taxes, you do want a little bit left over for profit that you can reinvest.
What about like a rainy day account? Like I was just talking to a client who was saying that she doesn't want to offer refunds, but then she's worried that if for some reason somebody wants a refund, and then she's like, but I spend all the money that comes in, and I'm afraid that if they want a refund, I have no money to pay them. And I was like, well,
that's a problem.
You need to plan for that. You need to have a little like cushion, or maybe you have a slow month 1 month, like start building that up. So that sounds all fine and dandy, but it's overwhelming when you're like, okay, I need to have my taxes saved up. I need to have, an expense saved up, all my, profit. Where do you start? How do you start kind of planning for that and budgeting for that?
Well, usually I advise people that, it comes down to, first of all, I hope everybody has a business bank account and they're not just working out of their checking account, because that's a problem.
So maybe they don't. So why is that a problem?
Well, first of all, Uncle Sam doesn't like that. They want to see that if you are running an actual legit business, that you have a business license, you've created an actual business checking account, and you're keeping your business finances separated from your personal finances. Plus, it just gets really, really muddy if you start to, because you're not really sure what's a business expense and what's not. It becomes very unclear for everybody. So you absolutely want to get a business account, run all of your business expenses in or out through that account. Don't ever put it in your personal account, and keep those very, very separate. I'm sure there's probably, I don't know the legal aspects of it. That's your wheelhouse, but I'm sure there's probably liability questions there too, depending on where your money's at.
Well, yeah, let's not get onto all of that. But let's just also say your CPA and your bookkeeper will love you, because it'll make their lives a lot easier. Yeah.
You want to start there. And then I usually advise people, you want to have a business savings account as well. And that's a great place to put that rainy day fund. And you want to, when money starts coming into your business, obviously in the beginning, you're going to be spending probably more than you are making for the first who knows how long. Typically, businesses take 2 or 3 years to start earning a profit. And it really depends on the type of business. And that can, that's so varied as to what happens in every industry. But for most businesses in the beginning, you're going to be investing money and you're not going to be seeing, as much come back to you, but hopefully you're going to grow. But that's where the savings account is great. It's a great place to put. I recommend if you can put a savings account in a completely different bank for your taxes, that's even better, because then you're not even tempted to touch that money because you can't see it.
Yeah.
And then you just get in the habit of moving money over for your taxes, like as money comes in, so that it's in a whole different place and you don't even have to worry about it. And then come tax time, when you're paying your estimated quarterly taxes, you've got it there ready to go. But otherwise, you really want to start to build a cushion. You want to have about 3 to 6 months of expenses figured out. So you know what it costs to run your business month to month. You've got 3 to 6 months, of that always in that savings account ready to go. So if you do have a slow month and money doesn't come in, you know that you can keep your business open and your doors open until you figure out what's going on and get some more business in.
Yeah. And you got to prioritize. I think I'm a big fan of the Profit First book by Mike.
Yes. Love that book.
I can never say his last name, but I
can never say it either.
I always link to it in the show notes, and I'll do so this time. And he talks about that analogy of the plate, about how eat off of a smaller plate, you eat less and you can lose weight. But then also you want to eat the good stuff first. So like you want to eat your salad first, or your vegetable, like the stuff that's really going to give you sustenance and nutrition. So I think it's the same way here, is like you got to feed yourself first. You got to, do your taxes. That you just have to do, even though they're gross. We all have to do them. And then you got to feed that first. And then everything else you can start
pulling for your salary and paying yourself once you've got all that part figured out, which is a mistake I think a lot of people make. They just see dollars start hitting their bank account and they're like, woohoo! They just start paying themselves money. And it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. You want to make sure that your business is viable and you've got enough, in, like you said, You got the smaller plate, you're running a lean business and all that before you just start paying yourself money.
So speaking of lean, where do you see people wasting money?
Ooh, that's a great question.
That is a good question. I'm really proud of myself. Okay. Yeah.
Ooh. I think in a few areas. I think people start maybe investing in a lot of the wrong, like things they don't necessarily need for their business. Like a lot of times that comes in the fun stuff, like equipment. And, I think all of us, like I'm right now, in the process of setting up a YouTube channel, and I'm so tempted to be like, I want to buy the best camera and I want to buy the best microphone. But like, do I really need that for a YouTube channel that doesn't exist yet? Probably not. Like, what are the things in your business that are actually going to be a return on investment, though, and you're going to see some money come back? Those are the most important things to be spending money on. While a lot of times all that peripheral stuff that's just fun to spend money on, like you probably don't really need. Multiple monitors for your office setup, beautiful office furniture. I love people that just go like, they're like, I'm in business now. I'm going to set up this gorgeous office. And it's like, okay, but is that something you really need right this second?
Yeah.
Like,
or business cards, I guess, at this point. Yes. Who needs their business card?
I just don't even need business cards anymore. I have no idea. But yeah, looking at, spend money in the beginning on those things like education, I think is hugely important to make sure that you're building your business the right way. I think branding and having a great website is really, really important right off the bat. So that's a great thing to invest in. But
getting your legal stuff set up.
You need contracts. You need all of that basis, your legal entity set up correctly. Like get all that stuff squared away before you start investing in, fun equipment. And I think people get a little caught up. I will say though, on the education thing, I'm one of those people too. Like everyone's like, you see all the courses and all the things and you're like, I want to buy them all. And it's
like, because I think by nature, we all love to learn. And I think a lot of people who get into this space is because they love that challenge of that learning curve. And then the courses just feed into that. And then plus you're doing everything initially yourself. So you're like, crap, I need to learn Photoshop. I need this. And so there's a process to it. But I think to your point, my husband always says like every dollar you spend in your business should return like $3 back. Yes. And I don't always think that way, but because I've done the buying the equipment that I don't really need or software. Oh my gosh. That's a suck. The software.
How many of all the online tools that were like, I need lead pages, I need ConvertKit, I need email software. And some of these you do really need, absolutely. But yes, we can totally get caught up in like, or buying the fanciest versions of them, like right off the bat. Like maybe you don't need that in year one of your business when you don't have any clients yet.
Yeah. So I think that's a really great way to think about it. And also of your time. That's something I've started doing is like, where am I putting my time? Where is this yielding me money or revenue? I'm not to always be like, I'll only do things that give me money, but you want to be very attentive of your time of like, is this moving my goals forward by spending time updating my website and moving that one picture that kind of looks off.
Yes.
Probably not.
Caught up in that stuff. They get caught up in like the perfectionism and like, let me get all these things in my business squared away before like I need the perfect office and the perfect website and all these things before I can like start charging people money. And it's like, no, it's the other way around. And like get the money charging thing happening first.
Yeah, I call it a sophisticated form of procrastination.
Totally.
You're really busy. You really are working, but you're not working on the right things. And one thing that I've noticed is if you look at people who are quote unquote successful in this business, or in this world, sometimes their websites are really, really ugly. Like,
oh my gosh,
they don't put their time and energy on the things that don't really yield anything for them.
Right. There's planners in Nashville, wedding planners that don't have websites because they've been doing this so long and have such a big referral base. They don't need them.
That's amazing.
I know. I'm sort of jealous, but at the same time, like that's smart. They're not investing in something that they're like, I don't need that. Like I get enough clients just by my referrals. So I don't need a website.
That's awesome. So, okay, cool. So we talked about how to price, how to think about pricing. We talked about, where we can kind of cut the proverbial fat, in terms of what we should spend on. Can we just like kind of talk more about kind of like the touchy-feely like sense of value and worth that kind of plays into all of this? I think it underlies all of it is you recognizing your value and what you bring into the world and asking for money? Because so much of it is mindset. So can you speak to that a little bit? I guess I don't really have a question. It just was more a topic I want to talk about because I see it in myself. I see it in so many other people. And then I see people who don't have that problem. And I'm like, oh, girl, how did she get that? Like, good for you.
Well, first, I think we all notice that I feel like women have this problem more than men most of the time of, asking for money or asking for things. But we all have this sort of fear around this for some reason, like the asking for what we're worth and finding that confidence. But you've got to look at, not just what you're specifically doing for your client and what you're offering them. But I always like to come back to the problem that you're solving for them. How big is that problem and what is it really? So looking at the wedding planning example, because that's where, my world and what I come from, like, yes, the product we sell is planning your wedding, but what we're really giving them at the end of the day and the problem that we're solving is giving them peace of mind and a stress-free wedding day. And so looking at not just, okay, what is the actual act of planning a wedding worth? It's looking at what is having a stress-free wedding day where you know that everything is just taken care of for you. What is that worth? And then you start to reframe that value question and you start to be able to see a little bit better why you should charge money, because you start looking at like, yeah, that's worth a lot. Like at the end of the day, because I'm saving them time, I'm, saving them stress, I'm saving them anxiety, I'm making, wedding days by nature, you're hopefully only going to have one of them. So, that's a huge factor as well, the scarcity factor that there's only one wedding day. So when you put all those things in perspective, that's where the value is. And I think we need to really start addressing that. People get very caught up in the time thing, like how long does it take you to do something? Like you're not paid for your time at the end of the day. You're paid for the problem that you are solving for your client or customer. And we've just got to reframe that.
Yeah. And you mentioned there's a really good book, that free book from the FreshBooks guy.
Yes.
Right?
Breaking the time barrier.
Yeah.
I always forget. I never remember his name, but if you Google Breaking the Time Barrier, FreshBooks PDF, you can link
We'll put it in the show notes. Yeah, it's a really quick read. And
awesome.
I remember reading after you recommended it. It just talks about how, just reframing that is that you're not trading dollars for hours. It's that value. And I don't know. I feel like it's easier said than done sometimes.
Oh, yeah. I think for everybody. But you have to also look at, you are in business and you have to, while there's great things about running our own businesses, we have flexible schedules and we get to do what we love and all that good stuff. You're still running a business. You're still working. There's still trade-offs. And when I started looking at like, okay, if I'm going to give up time with my family or time with my husband or, in the wedding planning world, you start looking at the fact that, okay, majority of weddings, especially in Nashville, are in the spring and the fall because it's the most beautiful times of the year. So you're giving up all of your Saturdays in the most gorgeous times of the year. Like you start looking at like, okay, what is that worth to me? And that sometimes helps too if you're having trouble focusing on the problem that you're solving for your client. Like start looking at what are you really giving up? And you got to make sure that what you're getting back, obviously having an impact and loving what you're doing is great, but financially too for all that you're giving up.
Yeah. And that's a really good point. I mean, your most valuable resource or your asset is your time.
It's time.
Because you can't make more of it.
Nope.
And especially like when you put it in that sense, like, wow, I'm giving up time away from my family in order to do this. And so, and also you want to feel good about it. Like when sometimes you like lowball yourself and you're like not making as much as you think you should, like you kind of resent the work. But you're like, I asked for it. I didn't ask for it, so
that's what I told them to pay me this.
And they did it. So what, so you don't want to ever get to that place. You want to feel like your time is being compensated both financially, but also it feels good to you or, what you're offering them, what you're getting in return. So cool.
Exactly.
Good stuff. Okay. So you also talked about productivity. So I wasn't planning on talking about productivity, but I think that's also, it factors into all of this stuff, you know, because people, I know what happened to me was because you are working for yourself. Oftentimes most people are working from home. There isn't this, I'm leaving the office now or, and you're doing so much of it yourself, right? Mm-hmm. You're responding to customer service emails, your social media, you're doing accounting, you're doing all of that stuff. And so there isn't, you feel like you're constantly working, it seems like, or even when you're not technically, your butt's not in the chair working, it's on your mind. Like,
oh, yes.
Okay. So what are some things that from the folks that you've worked with and that you've advised or coached, like that some good things that people can take away about how to be more productive and hopefully therefore more profitable with their own time?
Well, and this is where, I do think productivity and pricing and making money relate, because you need to be efficient in your business. Because at the end of the day, like we said, your time is valuable and you don't want to be spending it on things that aren't making you money. So that's a big piece that I believe strongly in, is really looking at, the ROI doesn't have to be like a definitive dollar amount necessarily, because sometimes the ROI is just growth in your business or making the right connections or different things, but really looking at the tasks that you're doing on a week-to-week basis and making sure that some of them are moving your business forward at all times. Because I think we do get stuck too in that, we're working with our clients, we're doing client work or making products or whatever, but we're not actually moving our business forward in any way. We're just sort of staying where we are. And that doesn't allow you to charge more money later. It doesn't allow your business to grow from the financial standpoint. So I think it's really important I'm a big believer in, good goal setting and kind of looking at, okay, what are the tasks I want to accomplish this year to grow my business, and then breaking those down into quarterly or monthly or whatever works for you, and then weekly, and then really looking at, okay, what are the things I'm doing this week that are going to grow my business and move it forward, as opposed to just getting stuck in this, like, let's just do client work all the time. Because I did that forever. There was like 2 years there probably where I just worked on people's weddings. I didn't really, and then I blogged them afterward. And that was about it as far as like marketing or anything went. And I wasn't working towards like, what's that next level I want to be at in my business? And how can I get there? And what should I be doing to get there? And I think we forget that because we do wear too many hats, and we need to service our clients first and answer their emails. So we do that, but then we're never looking at what we need to be doing. And I'm a big believer in doing that first. So I try really hard. Like if I have set a task for the day that's more of a working on my business task, I get that out of the way first, because otherwise it's always going to be the thing you keep putting off till the end of the day, because emails come in and clients ask questions and stuff happens. And next thing you know, your day's gone. You didn't work on your business at all. So I think that's really important.
Yeah. Michelle Loretta of Sage Wedding Pros, I interviewed her.
Oh, I love her.
I know. Isn't she the best? She's from SoCal too. That's why.
I haven't seen her forever. Like I was at a conference with her like years and years ago, and she was amazing. But it's been a while since I've chatted with her.
She's a USC Trojan, so she has a special place in my heart. So not that you don't, but so she. Well, I went to Loyola for law school, so you have a special place in my heart too. So she talks about, and I'll link to her show her episode in the show notes. She talks about how she schedules like 3 to 4 hours a week, like working on the business, like in her calendar. And it's not like doing accounting type of working on the business. It's like the big, like $1,000 an hour type of work that's like, okay, where are we, the big vision, goal planning type of things, not the, I need to
do my bookkeeping.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard, you kind of have to always it's kind of like zooming your lens in and out, all the time. Yep. Like you zoom it in when you're working in the business and zooming out. I don't know. I guess my thought came like, what if somebody doesn't want to? Like they're happy, I guess just doing the day-to-day stuff, and that's fine. We're not saying that you have to do it, but if you want to continue moving your business forward and kind of going to that next level, you have to make time for it, just as, you have to do with everything else. Okay.
Exactly.
Cool. So if you had to give advice to people just starting out and learning everything that you have learned from your experiences, what's like the one piece of advice that you're like, listen, you need just like, let's be straight up, like just do this and remember this and you'll be good.
My best piece of advice for someone just starting out in business would be it doesn't have to be a traditional business plan, but write a business plan. Like plan out your business before you jump and take the leap, because I feel like so many people don't take that time to do that step because you get so excited. You have this idea, you want to start a business. The next thing you know, you're like researching names and like throwing up a website and getting a logo off Fiverr. And you've skipped like a whole bunch of steps and starting with figuring out if your business is actually going to be viable. That's a huge first step. Certain markets are really oversaturated. You have to make sure your product or service is really unique, and you won't be able to figure that out unless you take the time time to plan out your business and think about the foundation of your business and think about your values and think about where you want it to go and how you're going to get it to get there and really look at, okay, what is the product or service I want to offer? And can I actually make money at this? Like go through the pricing strategy, figure that all out. Think about how many of those you're going to have to sell or do to make what you want to make. Is that a possible viable option or is that crazy? If you got to look at all this stuff before you start doing the fun stuff like branding and website design and all of that. And I think that's the biggest thing people can do, because you might find that the business idea you had isn't viable, but hey, maybe you thought of something else while you were doing those exercises that will work, or a way that you can set yourself apart from the oversaturated market. But you will grow so much faster if you take that time in the beginning to do all those foundational steps and planning it out than if you just like launch yourself into it head first. And that would be my biggest advice.
Yeah, that stuff is hard, because especially when you're like attached to an idea. And you're like, oh, but I so want it. This is going to be like the fullest expression of who I am, like,
yes.
But then you go and then you're like, I don't want to hear that it's not going to make me money.
I know.
But
it's hard.
It is really hard. But I think that's really good advice. I think also it's almost like if you see it as like a research project or a formula, then you can remove that emotional attachment to that idea and be okay with maybe this isn't such a good idea.
Exactly. And that was something when I started my wedding planning company. I come from like, my dad is in the finance world. And so my natural like first step was like to write a business plan. Like, cause I think my dad was probably like, where's your business plan if you're going to start a business? And I didn't realize so many years later that like nobody else in the creative world like writes business. But I think that's kind of what set me apart and allowed me to grow really quickly, is because I'd mapped all this stuff out before I ever even started. And I had a plan in place. I didn't just like wing it.
But like, what do you put in your business plan? Because everybody's like, no, you don't need a business plan. You need to be agile. Like you just put it out there. You lean, whatever, pivot, like all those like key terms, like pivot, no worries, minimal viable product.
I know. I think, and this is where I don't think, especially creative folks, like don't need the most, structured business plan ever. I think it's important, though, to take a look at those key things. I think market research is huge. I think you need to sit down and figure out, who else is trying to do what you're doing in your market and what are their strengths and weaknesses and all that good stuff. And how are they pricing themselves, and really looking at what they're offering before you jump in, so you can make sure that you do differentiate yourself enough. I think it's worth going through the finances and looking at, can this make me money? Like, what would I have to charge? How many would I have to sell of my product or service? Is that doable? Kind of mapping that part out. And then before you do the branding and the website, you need to have a good idea of who you are and what your uniqueness is and what sets you apart from everybody else. So you can make sure that when you are creating that brand and amazing website, that's reflected there. I think those are probably the three big pieces you need to spend some time thinking about before you just launch your idea into the world. But yeah, you don't have to do like the super traditional like business plan.
No bar graphs and pie charts.
No, okay. I don't think you need to do all that. I think the more important thing is that you do the thinking and the planning part, and at least write it down, like not just in your head, like actually take the time to really think through this stuff and write it down.
Awesome, Kristin. This has been super helpful. So unless you have any other burning tips that you want to add, I was going to move on to the final question. So
no, let's do it.
Let's do it. So the final question is, I forgot the final question.
Like, what's my final?
Oh, okay. No, I don't know. Okay. The one thing I know for sure is I ask you to fill in the blank.
The one thing I know for sure is that if you have the ability to do something, you can absolutely accomplish it with the right plan. And this kind of goes back to what I was just saying a little bit about business planning. I think if you have an idea or you have a dream, you can absolutely do it by breaking it down. And my example I always give for this is, I have a dream to run a marathon, well, specifically to run the Boston Marathon someday, because I was born and raised in Boston and it holds a special place in my heart. And I would have never thought that was something that I could do several years ago. I was a high school athlete, but like not super into running. And after I had my first child, I started just running with a running group here and there. And I got to the point where I could run like 3 miles pretty solidly without stopping or walking. And I was really proud of myself. And one day they were going off and doing a 7-mile like trail run. And they're like, you should come. And I was like, 7 miles, like no way. There's no way I could do that. And they were like, if you can run 3 miles, you can run 7. So I was like, all right. So I went and, it was hard for sure. And I had to stop a few times and walk, but I just kept moving and kept putting one foot in front of the other. And I ran 7 miles. And then the next thing I knew, they were like, you should sign up for a half marathon. I was like, that's insane. I'm not a type of person that can run a half marathon, but I was like, but I wanted to. And the next thing I know, this was I ran that 7-mile trail run in November, and I ran my first half marathon the next February. And all it took was mapping out a plan of like, all right, I'm at 7 miles. So this is how much I need to run on which days. Here's, in running, you do long runs, here are what my long runs are going to be. And as long as I followed the plan, and once in a while, I think I got sick a couple times in there, I had to shift or deviate a little bit, but then you get back on track. And at the end of the day, now I've run like 3 or 4 half marathons. And I know that I'll be able to run a full one because all I have to do is make the plan and work at it, and I'll get there. And I think that's, something I believe very strongly in, that if you can map it out and you have the ability to do it, you can do it if you just keep moving forward.
That is so true. And I just want to underscore your commitment and discipline, because you were running while you were pregnant.
Yes. I ran 2 pregnancies.
Oh my God. You can barely get me to run not pregnant. I can't imagine with like another human being inside of you. Like, oh my gosh.
It is kind of hard because you have to pee the whole time. That's the hardest part about it. Not to mention
that you're like off kilter, like your balance is totally off. Like, how do you not trip over yourself?
I definitely go way slow. It's more like a slow, like
it's like a hop,
exactly.
like a little
it's
mini,
not like running,
like a grand jeté, like a mini little like you're just skipping down this. Yeah, okay.
It's very slow when I get to like 30 weeks pregnant, but
it's insane. It's insane. I love it. I'm so inspired by you with every time. Aww. We've been working out and we go to this like fitness class, and I've been slowly starting to run faster and faster. Like, I was not a runner, but like I can go at like 7.5, 8 miles an hour, which is like huge for me. Not for very long, but I can go. I can get there. And I always think of you, and I'm like, okay, Kristin was running pregnant. Like, I should not.
I should not be complaining right now.
I should not be complaining, okay? And this is like a 30-second sprint that I need to do. So, okay. So that was great. And I think with that, we will just sign off. Thank you, Kristin, for being here. I really appreciate
for having me.
Yeah, I want to just talk to you all day.
This is so fun.
Okay, thanks, Kristin.
Thank you, Annette.
That was some really good stuff, right? This is a topic that I could talk about forever because it's something that, like I said, I see so many folks undervaluing themselves and their time. With that said, it's not all about money. Life is not all about that. I am a big believer in that. However, if you're running a business, the reality is you need to be generating some sort of revenue in order to keep the doors open, in order to pay your employees, in order to pay yourself. And money is not a bad thing. It is a tool that can get us to accomplishing some of the other goals or aspirations that we have. And I think approaching it from that mindset and making it a positive thing is also going to help you in being more comfortable in asking for what you're worth. If you'd like to get in touch with Kristin, you can learn more about her over in the show notes at AnnetteStepanian.com/podcast/35. Over there, you'll find how you can get in touch with Kristin, as well as links to other resources we mentioned during the show. I hope this has been a valuable episode for you, no pun intended. And I know this is a pretty hot topic for folks, and I would love to continue the conversation. So why don't you find me over on Instagram at Annette Stepanian and let me know what you think. What was your biggest takeaway from this episode, and what are you going to do differently moving forward when it comes to pricing and planning for your business? I hope you have a fantastic day, and I can't wait to talk to you later.